It had been way too long since I'd seen Ivy. Life had swallowed us whole. Work, family, late-night texts we never answered, promises to catch up soon that always got pushed. But that Sunday morning, we finally made it happen. I picked a cozy little cafe we used to love, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop that still smelled like hydrangeas and coffee beans. When I saw her walking toward me, smiling, arms open, I swear it felt like a little piece of home came rushing back. I didn't know that by the end of that brunch, everything I thought was real would start to unravel. I was glowing, and I knew it. There's something about falling for someone new that makes even your worst days feel like they've got a soundtrack. I'd been seeing this guy for a few months, and it felt different. Not flashy or overwhelming, just steady, genuine. The kind of thing that sneaks up on you, slow and warm, like the sun creeping through your blinds on a Sunday morning. I'd held on to every little thing he said, every look he gave me, thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found someone who saw me, really saw me. I couldn't wait to tell Ivy everything. We ordered mimosas, and between bites of croissant and laughter about our old college disasters, I pulled out my phone. Okay, now it's my turn. You have to see him, I said, scrolling to my favorite photo of us. He had his arm around me, and we were laughing at something stupid he'd said. I watched her face as she leaned in, and then something shifted. Her smile didn't just fade, it dropped like a curtain. She blinked, pulled back slowly, and then whispered the last thing I ever expected to hear. "That's the guy I've been seeing too." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I blinked, waiting for her to grin and say she was kidding, that this was some weird inside joke I'd forgotten. But Ivy wasn't laughing. Her brows were pulled in, lips pressed tight. She didn't break eye contact, and that silence, God, it felt heavy, like someone had yanked the air out of the room. "You're joking," I said, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. But she was already reaching into her bag. Her hands were shaking. She unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. Messages, photos, one of them at a concert, one of them on what looked a hell of a lot like our favorite hiking trail. I couldn't breathe for a second. Dates started flashing through my mind. Wait, I was with him on Friday. But she had a photo from Saturday. My hands started to sweat. The math didn't lie. The timelines overlapped. My stomach dropped. He had been seeing us both, like we were nothing more than two menu options. And we'd both been ordering the same damn lie. I looked at Ivy, searching her face. Was she in on it? Was this some twisted setup? But she looked just as wrecked as I felt, confused, embarrassed, hurt. She swallowed hard and said, "He told me he didn't want labels, said he wasn't ready, that we should just go with the flow." My chest tightened. I'd heard the same lines, word for word, like he had rehearsed them in front of a mirror. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood up, told her I needed a minute, and walked out into the cold morning air. The cafe door clicked shut behind me, but the conversation kept echoing in my head. I walked without a destination, past boutiques and dog walkers and the occasional clink of coffee cups. Everything felt normal around me, but I wasn't. My heartbeat thudded in my ears like footsteps behind me, and my fingers curled into fists before I could stop them. I wasn't just hurt. I felt played, reduced, like a placeholder in someone else's game. And the worst part? I didn't see it coming, not from him, and definitely not like this. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was layered. Complex. Ivy wasn't just anyone, she was my person, the friend who held my hand through breakups, bad job interviews, and my mom's hospital stays. And now we'd both been fed the same empty words by the same charming fraud. What were we even supposed to do with that? Scream at each other? Cry on the same shoulder we were supposed to lean on? The irony was cruel. It almost made me laugh. Almost. I wanted to believe I was above the drama. That I could just walk away, head high, and never look back. But deep down, I knew better. I'd always been the quiet type, the one who doesn't throw a fit, but remembers everything. I didn't have a plan yet, not exactly, but something inside me was stirring. Not vengeance. Not yet. Just a question that kept circling like a hawk overhead. What kind of man thinks two women won't talk? I sat on my bed later that night, phone in hand, staring at nothing. Ivy had sent over everything. Screenshots, timestamps, little digital ghosts of their so-called relationship. I didn't want to believe it, but there it was, plain as day. His words to her, they were recycled, almost poetic in their predictability. The pet names, the compliments, even the exact way he'd ended texts with sleep tight, beautiful. He wasn't just careless, he was calculated. Like he thought we'd never compare notes, like we were too busy being polite to ever compare wounds. And then came the photos. One of them in a booth at that pizza place he claimed he hated. A selfie at the beach. Our beach. I zoomed in, and there it was. The same damn bracelet I gave him for his birthday, wrapped around his smug wrist like a souvenir of his lies. The timeline unraveled in my mind, date by date, lie by lie. And it all fit, like puzzle pieces I didn't know I was missing. Every weekend he bailed on me. She was the backup plan. Or maybe I was. God, I couldn't tell anymore. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the manipulation. He'd sold me this story, that he was just healing, that he wasn't ready to label things. And I'd swallowed it because I didn't want to push. I wanted to be the cool woman, the understanding one. Meanwhile, he was playing boyfriend with both of us. I felt sick, but not broken. No. There was something sharper than heartbreak rising up now, and it was just getting started. The next morning, everything felt off. The light in my kitchen looked colder. My coffee tasted bitter. I kept replaying every moment with him like scenes in a bad film. His half smiles, his last-minute cancellations, the way he used to silence his phone, out of respect. And I believed it. I bought it all because I wanted to. That realization stung more than anything. Not just that he lied, but that I let him. I'd trusted someone who used honesty like a tool, not a virtue. Ivy texted again. This time, a picture of a receipt from a wine bar I'd never even heard of. Same night he told me he had to work late. It felt endless. The proof, the patterns, the deception. But in the midst of all that ugliness, I realized something else. Ivy was hurting too. She hadn't gloated. She hadn't screamed. She'd looked just as stunned, just as used. And for the first time since that brunch, I didn't feel alone. I felt mirrored. Like I was looking at another version of myself, standing in the same wreckage, wondering how we didn't see it coming. And maybe that was what shifted something in me. I didn't see her as the other woman anymore. She was a victim of the same charm, the same lies, the same damn script. We weren't enemies. We were evidence of how easily women can be divided by the men who deceive them until they start talking. And we had. Now the silence was broken. And with every message, every memory, I was starting to feel less like someone who'd been fooled and more like someone who was waking up. I sat on my porch that night, blanket around my shoulders, wine glass untouched. Ivy and I had texted back and forth all day. Short, choppy exchanges at first, then longer ones. We were both angry, confused, embarrassed. But more than that, we were starting to stitch something back together. Not the friendship we once had, not yet. But something honest, raw, real. There's a strange kind of bond that forms when two women realize they've been lied to in stereo. It doesn't erase the hurt, but it redirects it. Somewhere between the 4th message and the 50th, Ivy said something that stuck with me. If he fooled us both, maybe we show him what happens when we stop being fooled. It hit me like a match to dry wood, because she was right. He thought he could keep us apart, play us like opposing forces, but maybe he underestimated us. Maybe he forgot that women, when pushed too far, don't just walk away. Sometimes we walk back, with purpose. I didn't know what revenge would look like yet. Not exactly. But I knew one thing. It had to be quiet. Calculated. Not a scream, but a sting. A lesson, delivered with a smile. And suddenly, I wasn't boiling anymore. I was clear. Focused. calm in the way only a woman scorned and finally awake can be. Because heartbreak is one thing, but betrayal? Betrayal demands a response. I didn't cry. Not once. I didn't fall into bed with sad movies or blast heartbreak playlists. That's not who I am, not anymore. Instead, I got quiet, focused, the way you do when something clicks inside you like a lock turning. I started scrolling through texts, calendars, photos. I was piecing it together, not the relationship, but the operation. I wanted to know how deep the lie went, what overlapped, what didn't. Because he didn't just waste my time, he tried to insult my intelligence. And that I don't forgive. I replayed every detail. The weekend he said he was visiting his sister, Ivy had a photo of them at brunch. The time he canceled dinner because of food poisoning. He was apparently at a jazz bar, grinning wide, his arm around her shoulders. My stomach didn't turn anymore. It clenched, like something sharp was taking shape in my chest. He wanted to be the puppeteer, holding strings in both hands. But what happens when the puppets stop dancing and start cutting strings of their own? 3 days later, I messaged Ivy. Simple, direct, no fluff. You were betrayed. So was I. Let's return the favor together. She replied within 5 minutes. One word, absolutely. And just like that, we weren't just two women sorting through ruins. We were architects now, of something poetic, something sharp. Not just revenge, a reckoning. Carefully plated and served at just the right temperature. We didn't dive into the plan like amateurs with a grudge. We approached it like a project. 2 minds, 1 target. I created a spreadsheet, no joke, with dates, messages, locations. Ivy pulled screenshots and receipts. We double-checked timelines like we were prepping for court. Every detail mattered, because this wasn't going to be a dramatic meltdown. No crying in public, no plates flying. We wanted precision. We wanted his mask to fall, not ours. And when it did, it needed to crash loud enough for everyone around to hear it. Ivy suggested the bait, dinner. But not just dinner. Romantic, promising, perfectly tailored to him. She knew the place he loved most, that dimly lit bistro downtown with the overpriced steak and live piano on Saturdays. I laughed when she said it because of course he had a spot. Every con man does. We decided we'd both invite him. Different tones, different styles. Mine would be soft, intimate. I need to talk to you. Hers? Flirty, playful. I've got a surprise. Men like him always fall for the illusion of control. We were going to hand it to him, and then take it away. Every step we planned felt like taking something back. A little dignity here, a little power there. I won't lie, there was a rush in it. Not cruelty, exactly, but a kind of liberation, like stretching a muscle that had been clenched too long. He thought we were two women, too polite, too passive, too nice to ever confront him. And maybe once we were. But he didn't realize what happens when the illusion shatters and the silence turns into strategy. The days leading up to the dinner felt electric. Not anxious, charged. Like we were standing at the edge of a storm we had built ourselves. I practiced what I'd say in the mirror, but I knew it wasn't about the words. It was the delivery. Calm, clear, unbothered. The kind of composure that shakes a man more than shouting ever could. Ivy was the same. We weren't doing this out of desperation. We were doing it because we could. Because he needed to know we'd seen it all and we weren't afraid of him anymore. We chose Saturday night. Ivy made the reservation under a name he'd recognize, hers. I told him it was just us two. Important conversation. Ivy sent a playful, "Don't be late" text 5 minutes after mine. The trap was elegant, simple. He wouldn't know until he stepped inside and saw both of us waiting. And by then, it'd be too late. No exit strategy, no excuses that could twist their way out of the truth. We were done making space for his lies. This time, he was the one walking into a setup. That morning, I put on a black dress I hadn't worn in years, the kind that makes you feel powerful before you even zip it up. Ivy sent me a mirror selfie in red. She looked stunning. Not for him, for us, for closure. for the version of ourselves that needed to see this through. I looked at my reflection, took a breath, and smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was ready. Ready for him to finally see what two underestimated women look like when they stand side by side. The restaurant was dim, just as we remembered, soft jazz playing, candles flickering low, that faint clink of silverware and wine glasses humming like background music to a play we were about to headline. I arrived first, exactly as planned. I asked for the booth in the back, where the light hit just enough to see every reaction. My heart wasn't racing, surprisingly. It was steady, controlled, like it already knew this was necessary. I ordered a glass of red and waited, casually swirling it like it was just another Saturday night. At 8:03, he walked in, right on cue. I saw him before he saw me, confident, relaxed, phone in hand, wearing the cologne I used to compliment. The hostess pointed toward my table. His face lit up, unaware. He took 2 steps before his eyes landed on me, and froze. But before he could recover, there she was, Ivy, in red, gliding in behind him like a second act he hadn't rehearsed for. The moment he turned and saw her too, the air changed. His smile fell like a mask slipping to the floor. He stammered, "What is this?" I leaned back in my seat, lifted my glass, and said, "Relax. Stay for dessert. You clearly have a taste for variety." The people at the table next to us paused mid-bite. A waiter smirked as he passed, and just like that, he was cornered. No seat left to run to, no version of the story that could survive what was coming. Ivy slid into the booth beside me without a word. He stood, paralyzed, with nowhere to go but down. He finally sat down, like a man walking into his own trial. His eyes darted between us, searching for some crack in our resolve, some sign of weakness to exploit. But we gave him none. Ivy folded her hands on the table like she was at a business meeting. I sipped my wine and let the silence stretch just long enough to make him sweat. When he opened his mouth to speak, Ivy beat him to it. "We compared notes," she said, calm, crisp. "Every lie, every overlap, every excuse you thought we'd never share." He tried to interrupt, of course. They always do. Some garbled defense about bad timing or how things were complicated. But we weren't here to listen. We were here to deliver. I pulled out a small stack of printed messages. His, hers, mine. I slid them across the table, watching his face twist with each one. Ivy added her own, including the reservation confirmation for the hotel he told me was just for a business conference. The guests around us weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. I saw his bravado crack in real time. The posture changed. The smirk dissolved. He looked smaller, like the walls were inching closer and he knew there was no way out. That's when Ivy leaned in and said, almost sweetly, "You didn't just lie to 2 women. You lied to 2 women who talk." That was the moment it hit him. The story was over. His script had run out of lines, and now the only thing left was the truth, and the witnesses. A couple across the room had pulled out their phones, pretending to scroll while clearly recording. The waiter passed again, biting back a grin. We weren't making a scene. He was, just by being exposed. That's the thing about liars. They only thrive in silence, and we'd taken that away. He pushed back from the table, muttering something about being set up, like that wasn't exactly the point. Ivy raised her glass and toasted softly, "To honesty, however late it arrives." And I watched him flinch at the sound of his own unraveling. He stood, furious now, his voice low, sharp, like he was trying to control the narrative again. But control had left the building the moment we both showed up. He stormed out, brushing past the hostess like she was part of the betrayal. As the door shut behind him, a few people clapped. Others just smiled, knowing exactly what they'd witnessed. A masterclass in what happens when women compare scars and decide they deserve better. Ivy and I stayed. We ordered dessert. And for the first time in days, the tension in my shoulders loosened. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to analyze, no more truth to uncover. Just 2 women sharing a quiet moment in the wreckage of a lie neither of us built, but both of us had leveled. And somewhere in that stillness, in the hum of a restaurant slowly returning to normal, something else began to settle. Peace. Rebuilding a friendship after betrayal doesn't come with a guidebook. There's no how-to for picking up pieces that got scattered in silence and shock. Ivy and I didn't pretend things were perfect. We didn't slap a pretty bow on it and call it healed, but we talked, more than we had in months, about everything. Not just him, about us, about where we drifted and why. And slowly, honesty started growing in the empty spaces where assumptions used to live. It wasn't instant, but it was real. And that was enough. One afternoon, we met for coffee at the park near her place. No grand plan, no strategy, just two women trying to find their footing again. Ivy brought up a memory from college that made us both laugh so hard we got stares. It felt good, familiar, safe. We'd both been burned by the same flame, and somehow, instead of turning to ash, we'd forged something stronger. Not the naive closeness we once had, but something rooted in truth. The kind you earn after the storm has passed. I deleted every photo of him that night, every message, every trace, not out of bitterness, but freedom. I didn't want my phone to be a museum of my own mistakes. I wanted room for better things. I even blocked his number. Not because I feared he'd reach out, but because if he did, I wanted it to bounce back with silence. He didn't get to rewrite the ending. We had already done that, together. And now, it was time to start writing something new. A few weeks later, Ivy sent me a message. "Pack a bag. We're going somewhere with no Wi-Fi and way too much wine." I didn't even ask where. I just said yes. We booked a last-minute cabin in the mountains, the kind with creaky floorboards and a porch swing that faced a sky full of stars. No plans, no makeup, just cozy clothes, late-night talks, and the sound of trees instead of traffic. We didn't need healing. We just needed space, and each other. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without bracing. On the second night, sitting by the fireplace with a bottle of red and a bowl of popcorn between us, Ivy asked, "Do you think he's trying this on someone else right now?" I paused for a second, then smiled. Maybe, but if he is, they've probably seen the video. Because yes, someone had filmed the whole dinner. It had made its way onto social media, complete with captions like, "When the side chick and main chick team up." It wasn't viral, but it was enough. His face, everywhere. His lies, public record. We didn't post it. We didn't need to. Karma did the heavy lifting. Word got around. A mutual friend said he tried to date a coworker, and she shut it down with a screenshot and a laugh. He wasn't just exposed, he was branded. Not by fire, but by fact. And that, honestly, was more satisfying than any dramatic revenge ever could be. Because while he scrambled to explain himself, we were already somewhere quiet, sipping wine, and not giving him a second thought. We came back from that trip lighter. Not because the pain had vanished, but because we'd stopped carrying it like a secret. There's something powerful about naming what hurt you, saying it out loud, and watching it lose its grip. Ivy and I still had our moments. Awkward pauses, little reminders of how close we came to breaking. But we also had laughter, openness, and a kind of loyalty you can only build once you've seen the worst and decided to stay anyway. Back in the city, I passed by the cafe where it all started, the brunch, the photo, the unraveling. I didn't go in, I didn't need to. That chapter had closed, not with revenge, but with clarity. He thought he could pit two women against each other to keep his lie alive. Instead, he gave us the one thing we'd been too busy to build on our own, the truth. And once we had that, there was no going back to silence. I don't think about him much anymore, and when I do, it's not with anger. It's with a strange kind of gratitude. Because in a twisted way, he reminded us of something we'd forgotten, who we are when we stop doubting our instincts and start trusting each other again. He lost two women that night. We walked away with something better, our power, our peace, and a story that we owned, together.